All right. So here we are. I am Laura Rasines, and this is my friend Matthew Stensland-Bos. Have I said that correctly?
Yeah,
Right?
Matthew Stensland-Bos.
Cool.
Forging your legend.
Yeah, he's also a neuroplasticity coach, and he's been my friend for almost 6 years. We've been in this healing journey, like almost hand in hand, right?
Yeah. You started before me, and then when I jumped in, we started just we became friends quickly and supported each other in the journey. And
Yeah.
yeah, now we're both coaching and assisting people, and that's pretty cool.
It is. It is. I'm really glad that you said yes to this interview. I really wanted to make this. And well, without further ado, let's begin with the questions.
Let's
Okay,
do it.
let's do it. I've been thinking a lot lately about because many people talk about this, okay, in the neuroplasticity healing well community, okay. Sometimes people have to give meaning to what happened to them. And that's something that I came across also in my journey. Like, okay, why all of this happened to me? Um, because, we all have these kind of questions, right? When something that hard, that perfect storm hits, it's like, why me? What are your thoughts on this? Like, do you think that there's like a meaning um for illness and getting sick? Is there like a, I don't know, like an assessment from the universe or God for us to understand when we get sick? What do you think about that?
That's a great question. It's a golden question. I think it's one most people ask. I've talked about this in my videos a little bit on my YouTube channel, but it's I find it more fun to talk about these things in a conversational setting than just monologuing on a video. So I would say one thing I will note is people should avoid obsessing about that subject,
Mhm.
especially when you're in the thick of it. People like to obsess about what happened, why did it happen, what did I do wrong, does God hate me? And often it's more productive to just focus on how do I move on from this? How do I change when I need to change? But sometimes you need to dig into it to understand what you need to do to change. And so there's a line there. When I see people just looping and looping and looping about that question, then it's time to move on. But if you're just asking the question like, what do I need to learn here? What do I need to understand? That can be really, really useful, really helpful. And I think if there's kind of a common theme I see in people going through a major illness or more broadly, just a major difficult period of their lives, it's across the board. I can't think of an exception, a time when God or your soul or the universe, however you want to put that, is trying to say, I need you to make a change. I need you to become aware of something. I need you to get on a different path. I need you to stop this old way of being or just initiate you into a new way of being. And so it's not always very easy. It's actually rarely easy because it's supposed to break you out of who you were, break you down, burn you down like a phoenix so that you can rise and become something else. And
Mhm.
so there's almost always an element of you need to change, you need to grow, you need to cast something off. It's time to emerge as something new. And this is the most expeditious, efficient, uh, real way that you can do that.
Hmm.
So people, it's natural to have feelings of why me and to feel stuck or victimized. That's a natural part of the process, but we have to eventually move past that and say, okay, this is here to help me evolve. This is here to help me grow. No matter how difficult, no matter what I'm going through, I can feel the difficulty of it. I can feel the pain of it, but also see that there's something beyond this that is really, truly here to help me.
I agree with that point of view, 100%. And I think, in my opinion, that many people get stuck in their healing journeys because they don't get to that realization of, hey, okay, this happened to you, but what are you going to do now? Right? And they can rewire in circles all the time, like, oh, I need to fix this, I need to fix this, why me? There's always, I mean, for some people that's always in the background, in the back burner, right? All the time. And they don't get it. And I don't blame them. I've been there too at the beginning. But when I understood and I, let go of the thought of the why, spiritually speaking, I understood that it wasn't as important to even know that unless I was, trying to do my best to get out of that place and get the message of, hey, girl, there's something here that you need to know. Right?
And I think that the specifics of the lesson are different for different people. For some people, it's going to be about letting go of a past identity. And for other people, it's just an initiation into a new stage of life. And these things all overlap, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, there are definitely common themes of take command of your life, follow God's path for you, and rise above.
Yeah. Do you think that some aspects of your old personality, if you have to make a change with that, can still be there inside of you, hand in hand with the new personality that you are building? I mean, because in my opinion, that's something that many people get some like a very strict approach with that, and they try to be 100% different from what they were, and that can create lots of conflict with your essence. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, it depends on what the old things were, you know. Sometimes you have to make a clean break and let yourself be completely burned to the ground and remade anew. And sometimes holding on to anything from the past will slow or stop that process. But it depends on where it's coming from. That's often the answer. It depends.
It depends.
Because, yeah, I think sometimes people get into this trap of thinking that they have to transcend everything. And that if they just transcend it, if they just rise out of it, then they won't have to touch it again. That's where that up and out Eastern mysticism, screw the body, I don't need to be in my body, I'm just consciousness kind of trap goes. It doesn't lead anywhere because eventually you have to come back into the body and realize that you couldn't escape any of it. You've got to transmute it. Um, but there also comes a time when you've cycled through stuff enough and you just simply have to make a choice to let that past piece of you go. So I think it depends on if you're letting go of something that's part of you at your core or something that was just part of your false self that you built up to protect yourself. The things that you truly, the things that are truly you, you can't get rid of them forever. You just can't. Be like, if I tried to get rid of music, it would find me. I could run it to the corners of the world and it would find me. You can't run away from that stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that some stuff have chosen us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not that my nervous system chose that. It have something. It's like, for instance, it happens to me too with the kind of music that I listen to. It's like I was a little girl and I was resonating with that, and my nervous system was like, okay, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And even if somebody come here and tell me, oh, you shouldn't listen that because it's not good for your health, I can't help it. So so yeah, I agree with you that there's some stuff that your nervous system didn't have any other choice. It was like, this is my essence, and I can't change this. I can't. So in my opinion, that has to do more with the bottom-up approach, right? You were talking about that too beforehand, like your body's choosing some stuff and you are not rationalizing that. It's like it's somatic, it's just what it is. I like this, right? It's like, when you are addicted to chocolate and you've been addicted to chocolate for like 20 years, you're going to have those neural pathways and your body is just craving that. And maybe this is not a great example because I'm talking about extremes, right? But I mean that more for personal choices. Whereas I see people in the healing community that they want to change everything and they question everything that once back in the day they were very happy with, like, and that creates lots of friction and doubt and limbic doubt in people's journey. So in my opinion, fighting against what is somatically you is going to create problems in your limbic brain, even more problems.
Give me a more specific example so that we can
Um,
if there's an element to this I want to understand so that I can expand on it further.
okay. It's like, for instance, the kind of people that you like and resonate with, right? I've been interested in, attracted, to people that are more like woo-woo people, weird people. They are introverts. They like, fantasizing about stuff. And I feel really great when I am with that kind of people. My nervous system gets into that ventral state. Whereas if I choose to be surrounded by people that are more like replicants, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think a good rule of thumb is if the process you're using to try to heal takes you farther away from your true self, you're not going to heal. If it takes you closer to your true self, that's a very good indication you're on the right track.
Yep, I agree with that. I agree with that. What do you think about spirituality, the spiritual approach, and anger? Because anger is seen as very sinful in some way or another. What do you think about how can we heal and feel the anger at the same time and not feel that we are being arrogant or sinful?
That's a great topic. Anger is one of my favorite things to talk about in healing because so many people got cut off from their anger and were taught they shouldn't be angry. And then that got piled on by maybe it started with their parents and then they got added to by church or whatever. And it's just all ways of stripping you of your power and your sovereignty. I'm not saying church is always bad, just that religions can tend to shame you out of authentic expression when they're misapplied. I think anger is actually a very, very healthy thing. And if you aren't able to be angry, you're probably not going to heal because everybody has moments in life where anger is a healthy response. And you need to be able to be angry. I wasn't very good at being angry because it's kind of conditioned out of me. And once I learned how to be angry again, my energy started to open back up and I started to rebuild and feel myself again. And so I encourage people to actually connect to their authentic anger instead of victim anger. Um,
Mm,
victim anger
interesting.
being, I'm angry because you did this to me. Authentic anger being like, I'm angry because this is against my core self. Um, or, victim anger being, I'm trapped, I'm stuck, I'm small, and I'm raging against something versus authentic anger of, I am powerful, I am the captain of my life, and this is my authentic feeling, and I'm going to feel it for myself, not for anybody else.
Super interesting. Yeah, there's like a different kind of approach, two different kinds of approach with anger, in my opinion. The one that you were saying, like, okay, I feel my anger, but I don't project my anger onto others,
Yeah.
right? It's like, okay,
Right.
I have the right to get into my bedroom and, punch this pillow or growl or act like a really angry animal. But that would be like a healthy expression, right?
Right.
People misunderstand what healthy aggression is, with
Yeah.
violence.
I think people usually end up on one of two ends of the spectrum. Either they are ruled by their anger or they're terrified of their anger. And in either case, they are not very powerful because real power does not come from suppressing your anger. It does not come from being consumed by it either. It comes from being able to channel it in a healthy way. Um,
Mhm.
and that's something that I have to work on with a lot of my clients because usually people with chronic illness have gone the suppression route. I've met very few people who were, chronically ill, who are the explosive side of things, but it happens too.
Yeah, I was more like that when I was younger. Before my perfect storm, I had anger issues with, you know, in my relationship, in some of my relationships, because that's what I saw when I was growing up with my parents. But still, I understood that when I got hit by my perfect storm, all of that vital force got stuck and I couldn't feel the anger. And I agree with you. I mean, when you're not feeling angry, you don't have the vital force to, show your nervous system what expansion is again, right? So it's a good indicator that you are healing when you're feeling in that annihilation. Is that correct? Is that correct? The word annihilation? Am I pronouncing it that well?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Annihilation energy,
You mean like annihilation energy?
annihilation energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. When we feel back again, that is a good sign that we are healing, that the nervous system is getting the capacity again to self-express in that raw way, right?
Well, there's a few reference points that I can kind of point people to that touching on the sinful or wrongness of anger. Let's take Christianity first. Jesus, there's examples of him actually getting angry, righteous anger, not victim anger, but there's an example of when he went into the temple and there were a bunch of people basically doing commerce in the temple and he lost it on them. He threw them out, tipped over the tables, and just threw them out of the temple. And so just anger. In Hinduism, there's there's god heads, or how would you say that? Just elements of the pantheon of gods that have definite anger in them. Um, like the goddess Kali, who is, the embodiment of that dark feminine wrath. And Shiva himself, as they say, Lord Shiva is not by any means a passive, wimpy character. So I think that idea of anger being sinful is probably more of a Catholic Church controlling twist and not actually inherent to Christianity, not actually true to Jesus or really any true faith. That's more of a man-made twist that was put on it. Um,
Mm,
I don't
mm,
think there's anything sinful about anger until you project it and take away your own power. Because to sin means to miss the mark. And you miss the mark when you assume you are powerless and you put your power in somebody else's hands. But you can be angry and still empowered. For example, somebody can do you wrong and you can scream at them and call them names and insult them and just turn it into a huge drama. Or you can say, that really hurt me and I'm angry about that. You should not have done that. And you will not do that again because that is not okay with me. The second one is healthy anger. And that can
mhm,
be in exactly that tone, or it could be with a really intense tone, but the words and the energy of that are very, very different. There's nothing sinful about that. In fact, I think it's actually more sinful to suppress anger when it is warranted. Like the anger that we should have about some of the things that are going on in the world right now that I don't want to get into because I don't, this is a healing channel, but we can all think of something where there should be some anger
Yeah.
because that anger is part of what moves things. It's part of what stops things that are unrighteous and wrong. So anger is a beautiful thing when used correctly.
I agree. I agree 100% with that too. So, in my opinion, and I want to talk about this too. What do you think about the new age community and this tendency in, within people in that community to accept everything and think, oh yeah, everything is right, everything happens for a reason, you don't have to get angry. What kind of, I mean, I call this is a concept that I um that I got from my therapist, and he says this is new age, this Disney new age, right?
Good way to put it. Um, there's two sides to this, and first I'll say the side that kind of agrees with that. There is a sense on a certain level, you know, everything is part of God's plan in a certain sort of way. Everything is here to help you. You could say that that is true in a certain limited sense, on the highest cosmic level, perhaps, but and also you can use anything to your benefit, and God can use anything to your benefit that has happened to you. But at the same time, yeah, there's an incredible passivity to that. And that was a big one. Once I broke that idea in my head that everything's perfect, there's no reason to get angry, everything's perfect as it is, it's a great way to spiritually bypass, miss the whole human experience, cut off from your power, be deluded. I made a video recently, it's not out yet, but it's about acceptance and how a lot of people view acceptance as the highest of spiritual ideals. And sometimes acceptance is really definitely a beautiful, beautiful thing. And you need to accept certain things, and letting go and surrendering can be part of that. But
Mm-hmm.
people also take that to an extreme where they just give up their power. And I think a lot of new age philosophy is a trap because it's a bunch of truths, half truths, and lies mixed together that confuse people and spin them out and take them out of their bodies and make them, if something bad is happening, they say, well, it's just part of consciousness, I don't have to worry about it, and that may be true on the highest level and
Mm-hmm.
everything's
Mm-hmm.
perfect, but on a human level, if you see somebody suffering and you have something you can do, but you're too spaced out to care, then you've missed the mark. You've lost your way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It is disempowering. Absolutely disempowering. And yeah. Yeah. And what about guilt? Do you think that guilt is a man-made also? I mean, because we know that, we got fear, we got sadness, we got happiness, and then what's the other one? It would be guilt, right?
I don't think guilt is man-made. No. Um, I made a video on this a long time ago, but the difference between guilt and shame. Shame is something where you're saying to yourself, I am bad. Guilt is I did something bad. So shame really doesn't have much of a use, except maybe if somebody's done something really, really wrong to teach them to do differently. That's the main purpose of
Mm-hmm.
of shame or guilt. But without getting too deep into that distinction, guilt is natural. If you make a mistake and it hurts somebody, you're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel
Mm-hmm.
bad to some degree, I would assume. And it's not supposed to be something where you just feel that forever.
Mm-hmm.
So shame may be man-made because shame is not I don't think shame is natural, but to feel guilty, like I did a wrong thing and I realized it was wrong. And this guilt is here to teach me so that I can choose differently next time. I think that's natural and inherent to
Mm.
a healthy human psyche.
Yeah, it's like it gives you like a moral perspective of what's right
Mhm.
and wrong, right? I just can't go out there and kill people because I don't feel any shame, right?
Right. And that's where we get back to that whole new age thing. There is no truth. All truth is relative, which is a scary, diluted bunch of shit. Some truth is relative,
Hmm.
and we have to honor different people's relative perspective. But there is an absolute truth as well. And to be completely disconnected from that and to have no guilt because, all is one and there is no right or wrong. That's that's not right either.
Hmm. 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 What would you say about the people? Because we all felt that way when we were healing. Guilt, shame about being sick. This is a huge topic, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're asking so many great questions. This is um the simplest answer I can give, and this may not work for everybody, but it's just to realize that you have nothing to feel ashamed about, nothing to feel guilty about. If you'd known better, if you could have done better, you would have. You didn't, you
Right.
know, with very few exceptions, you didn't like bring yourself to this point consciously. And even if you did, you know, maybe that's just what it is. And the past is the past, but the vast, vast, vast majority of people are not choosing this. They're not asking to be ill. And it's not because of something they've done wrong. Back to one of your earlier questions, it's like God doesn't hate you. You're not getting punished for something. Um,
Yeah.
you're going through this for reasons you can discover or not, but
Hmm.
setting aside any shame about it is really vital to getting well because like I said, shame means I am bad. That's the message that you're sending yourself. And nobody in the world, at least nobody that I have met, truly deserves to carry that shame of I am bad. They deserve to carry the guilt of I have done bad
Uh-huh.
and that I should grow. But if you just say I am bad, then that's who you are. That's your core self. And so people have to be able to move on from shame and guilt in order to heal. But if you're not finding it easy to move on from that, um, I guess a good question to ask yourself is what evidence do I have that I that this makes sense to hold on to? Like what true evidence? And then you got to run that by somebody who can actually talk it through with you. But because you're not always going to see it clearly, but people might say, well, I'm bad because I have these angry thoughts at my mother. And
Hmm.
then I might say, well, has she done you wrong? Well, yes, but it's I shouldn't be angry at her. And I'm like, by whose standard? What again, there's the anger thing. Why shouldn't you be angry if
Right.
she's done you wrong, or even if she's hurt you unintentionally, even if she meant the best, she hurt you, why should you feel ashamed of having anger? So you can walk through this and see if it makes sense logically. And most people that I've ever worked with, if they carry any shame, they come to see that it's not based in truth. It's
Hmm.
based on distortions and wounds that they endured in younger years that are still being carried into the present. And once they see that, they can start to see shame and guilt as just an emotional response that sometimes is based on conditioning and sometimes it's just based on physiology. Like, I shit you not, sometimes just being in a certain physiological condition, like a certain level of tired and wired or some combination, you can just end up feeling more guilty and it has nothing to do with circumstances. So
Right.
those are some ways that I sometimes help people to separate from,
That's a great approach.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it
Totally.
takes more work than that, and that's why I get into trauma work with people sometimes, or get into nutritional stuff occasionally, or I should say more than occasionally, but it's usually not the first thing we touch on. Usually the brain has to get in line first, as we've often talked about.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that approach. We need to get into the cave, carrying that torch, and that torch will be the brain retraining, and to just, address the top-down approach. And then, you know, when we are into the cave, we can just see the whole picture and get into that physiological, so to speak, stuck survival energy that is still inside of us, right? So, and what do you think about relationships? And I mean, when we are kind of healed, I don't know if healed is the word, because this is an ongoing process, right? But how can we choose now people and deal with relationships and all the different kinds of situations that we are going to endure in life, not getting back into those old pathways? Because I can feel how the old wants me to pull me back. Sometimes I get, because the wounds are still there, they are closed, but they can still sometimes hurt. And what do you think about choosing healthy relationships when we are now reintegrated in life? Because that's hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's not always easy to do that, because you're still going to be playing out whatever subconscious patterns you have, whatever your templates are for these things. They're going to continue to show themselves. But that's the beautiful thing about relationships, is that your self and your beliefs get mirrored right back to you. If you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't value you, chances are you don't value yourself. If you're with somebody who's never present with you, are you present for yourself? Maybe you are. It's not always, if you see this in another person, that means it's in you. That's another spiritual, or I should say, new age trap.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes true. In other cases, it just means that you think that's what you deserve, and you think that's the best you're going to get, or there's some other lesson you can take from it. And the lesson isn't always, okay, I've got to keep learning because there's always something I can take from it. I've got to stay in this terrible relationship. No, the lesson might simply be, I don't have to deal with something that's not right for me. I can walk away. Once you learn that lesson, you know, like there were certain things that I had to understand about relationships and the relationships I was attracting. And once I stopped believing certain things and thinking I needed to do certain things, all of a sudden I had a relationship that was great and has been great for 4.5 years. As I said, I'm not doing the old ways anymore. I don't deserve that shit. And I'm the one who can change it. It's not on the other people I was with. The women I was with in the past, they were just reflecting where I was, and I took responsibility for what I needed to change in myself, what I was willing to tolerate, what I wanted, and focused on healing, but also on the vision I had for what I actually did want.
Sounds really good. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's hard sometimes though to choose correctly and not fall into the trap of the subconscious mind of, oh, this is not as bad. We have to really grow that observer, right? But yeah,
True.
yeah. What would you say to someone that is suffering right now and wants to reintegrate in the world and get good relationships? What would be your advice for that people in that moment?
Know what kind of archetype you have in your wounds when it comes to relationships. Like, are you the one who has to save people and sacrifice yourself? Like, are you a martyr? Are you a savior complex type person? Are you a, self-denier? Are you the sort of person who projects everything at everybody else, and everybody else is always the problem, and you're always running away from relationships? Or so whatever archetype you have, just know what that is, because if you know what that is, you're a big part of the way there already, because you can choose differently. Um, you know, some people, nobody's ever good enough for them. Some people,
Mm.
they don't have high enough standards. Just whatever the case is, you've got to know what your thing is, and then hold a vision of what you really want and what you actually deserve, which is often best built with a coach or therapist or even a good friend who knows you. Because it's too easy to fall into a trap of thinking, well, this is what I'm used to. This must be normal. And sometimes you need to have a broader view that says, well, is this normal? Or am I just playing out patterns?
That's the tricky part, right?
And sometimes it's both. People, that another new age concept is twin flames. And, I played with that concept when I was younger, and now it doesn't interest me much because it's like there's definitely a person who is right for you.
I agree.
And
I agree.
a soulmate, but people get into what's the difference between twin flames and soulmates, and how do I know if this person's my twin flame? And they just get obsessed and start chasing after things, and it's kind of not that useful. More useful to ask, is this person somebody who I can grow with, where there's respect and love, and can we continue to be on this path together? Because I definitely feel like I'm with my soulmate, but it was ironically when I stopped worrying about soulmate and just focused on being in a healthy relationship with somebody whose company I enjoyed and who I could grow with, that took care of itself.
Yeah, that's really interesting and ironic at the same time, right? When we are trying to control everything, and when you let go, things, begin to flow in the end, right?
Right.
Yeah. And another topic that I would like to talk about is emotions. People sometimes get really confused with, in this healing journey, within like, oh, do I have to feel my emotions? Do I have to always redirect from my emotions? Because that sometimes we can get in a rut also with our emotions and our emotional states, and we can get addicted to that. And when we are beginning to heal and we are beginning to use the tools, sometimes it's not very beneficial to go right away into the body, because you're going to get in a shutdown response and it's not going to be possible. So how did you deal with that along your healing journey? How did you deal with that?
Well, the answer is different for different people. I was in such a terrible state that the way I did it is different from how some people might do it. I completely had to shut off from anything that was not helpful to me. I completely and utterly 24/7, if I was awake, my mind was being directed into the places I needed it to go.
Okay.
24/7 for like I literally didn't pause from it if I was awake for the first year or so. Over time, it started to relax somewhat, but I had to not feel anything that wasn't part of the vision I had for where I wanted to go. The huge caveat there is that that's not right for everybody, and it's definitely not right for anybody all the time forever. The reason I had to do that was that my brain and my body were so broken at that time that I had to completely cut off from that in order to build the new pathways. So at first it was only positive, and then the one quote unquote negative emotion, which, as I said, I don't think is negative, that I started to allow in was anger. And there was a time where I had a lot of healthy anger going through me, and I even retrained on anger in a certain phase. I don't mean retrained around it. I mean, literally, I used anger as my fuel for retraining.
Right.
But then eventually, once I'd gotten my brain to a place where I was able to command the pathways it went down, and I could go where I wanted to go with it, then I started to integrate back in other feelings, and eventually, sadness could come back, and other feelings that were just, part of a human experience, but maybe not helpful in a certain phase. And so generally my encouragement for people is, if you need to, you can go down the path of just being very deliberate. Here's where I'm going, here's where I'm not going. But eventually, one way or another, you're going to have to be able to be okay with the whole spectrum of emotion. It just may not be immediately, and that's okay.
Yeah, I had to do the same in the beginning. My brain was absolutely broken, and I was, going all the time to that ultra positivity, and it felt great, even though I was not feeling great in my body. I remember that I was feeling, you know, very happy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was maybe the happiest time of my life, and I was really sick, but I was really addressing all the bullshit that I was thinking, that I've been thinking for, since ages. So I took the same approach, and then afterwards I learned how to make peace with my body and the sensations. And, I figured out that I realized that I was running away from my body since I was a little girl. So that was creating the, like this, you know, cut, so to speak, between my head and my body. And I use a technique nowadays that I like to call the traffic light. So if I am in red, I know that I must use some tools, okay, to get into like an orange, amber orange, greenish light. In my opinion, that's where life should happen, in that spectrum of greenish, amberish, but the red, we should avoid that. Not avoid, but work to get out of that state. We cannot live in that red light for a long time, because then we get dysregulated, right? So this analogy of the traffic light really helps me to understand, okay, how's my body feeling within this spectrum, right? It's very important. The somatic piece is really, really important. And lots of people try to bypass it. And you have to go to the dark basement to go up into the light. You have to do it. There's no other way around.
Yeah, I would say you're right. As long as you do it with, you would agree with this, I'm sure. Just, you have to have an anchor into a positive pathway, a regulation pathway, and sometimes you have to build the regulation pathway before you can do any other digging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it was true for me, true for a lot of people, probably true for you. I had no regulatory pathway. I had no peace, no ability to be with myself. There was nothing but dysregulation and pain left. And so I had to build something else. But then once you had that scaffolding, once you had that rope you could grab onto, then you could descend into the depths, because you knew that you could come back out of it. It wasn't
Right.
like, I'm going to touch that and then I'm going to drown in it. You could actually come back out when you needed to.
Right.
And that's really key if you're going to do that kind of work.
Right. I agree. I agree. Yeah. You just have to have like a positive anchor, because life happens, and we're always gonna get this tendency to go back to the old pathway. So what do you think about, after reintegrating in life and living your normal life, having like a nervous system hygiene in a daily basis? What do you think about that?
Well, I kept retraining after I was probably done, because I really felt the value of that stable foundation under my feet and what that could do for me.
Yeah.
But eventually I stopped, and it just became what felt right day to day. What did I need to just take care of myself? I think it is useful though, whether that's continuing a practice that's very structured and daily, or whether it's going to more of a relaxed, today I'm gonna, do some just slow walking in nature, and then the next day maybe it's more drawn to breathing.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you do and how structured it is depends on where you've been and what you need to do from there. If you've been really, really, really rigid for a lot of your life, you may need to learn to flow more. And if you've been flowing and unable to be structured, you better get your ass into some structure, you know? That's
Right.
how I do it.
Right. Yep. Yep. Well, my approach is kind of similar. I stopped brain retraining like in 2021 after the pandemic. I was not doing like a super rigid structure, but still. But nowadays I keep an eye on my nervous system because it has some tendencies to go to the extremes, But I only use the top-down tools if I am in a thought rut and I am ruminating a lot. Then I do some brain retraining, and then after I try to feel the leftovers of that rumination in my body. I try to always toggle back and forth between the head and the body, so to speak. So if I am just lining up at the grocery store, I'm trying to feel my body, even if I feel good, because that's creating, again, neural pathways of safety and bringing back that sensation of, oh yeah, brain, this is my body. And look, it feels good. We can get so obsessed about addressing what is, not working well and not putting the attention when we're feeling right. And the nervous system also needs that.
It's true. I think I see that a lot. People eventually go to things and tools that are more intuitive, more simple, because what's simpler in the end? If you're in a place where you're pretty well regulated, you're pretty healthy, but you just need a little bit of maintenance, and that's almost everybody, honestly. Everybody needs some maintenance on their nervous system from time to time. Is it
Sure.
easier to go through a 20-minute round with all these different steps, or is it easier to just take a moment, close your eyes, do some conscious breathing, feel your body? One of those takes a lot more effort, and I'm not against effort by any means. Like I had to really put in a lot of effort at one point, but when it comes to just taking your nervous system down a couple notches, sometimes easier is better. And
I agree with that. And yeah, I think that lots of activities can regulate you and can have like a really good impact on your nervous system. Just living life from your values and from your essence, your true essence. So it's been talked a lot lately in the community about values and what we want to accomplish and the dreams that we have. Do you think that that's utterly important in order to heal, like to really recalibrate and, get in touch again within who you truly are?
yeah, I really, really do. I think if there's one thing that I probably have the most focus on with people, the thing that if I were like, people only know me for one thing, it's purpose. Because if you can connect to your purpose, like really connect to your purpose, whatever that looks like for you. I taught a
Yeah.
whole series on this, and so I'm not going to try to get into everything. It's a massive subject, but the simple version is if you can get into whatever version of your purpose you have, whether that's this big external thing where you're, curing cancer or making music or coaching people or traveling the world,
Right.
or it's an internal thing where you're simply asking yourself every day, how can I be the most loving person I can be? Or how can I help people feel good about themselves in every interaction I have? Or whatever that thing is, that purpose can trump everything else. I watched how when I tried to just retrain without focusing on my purpose, didn't get very far. And as soon as I took my focus off of retraining and healing, my main priority, and used that as a way to follow my purpose, things started to open up. And as I followed that, in my case, music was a big part of that. I started coaching at a certain point too, but the thing that was like a daily, I will do this if it kills me kind of thing was music. And there were definitely times where I didn't have any way to physically get through something,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have any strength in me for it mentally or physically, and somehow I did it because I just had such a dying undying need to do this thing. And that fueled me in a way that nothing else could. So I think when you talk about identifying your values and your purpose, there's sometimes nothing more important. Because if you know what your values are, you know what you're going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate. And so your boundaries come in with that. And the
Mm-hmm.
people you have in life get sorted out with that. And if you have the values figured out, you're going to know to some degree what your vision looks like just from that. And your values and your purpose interlink. You know your purpose and you
Mm-hmm.
know your vision. You know where you're going in life, what steps you need to take. And when you connect to your purpose, like I said, everything else can open up from there. Even if you're still probably going to have challenges, it's like the difference between trying to get through a desert with a nice big water bottle versus get through a desert with no water.
Mm. That's a great analogy. I love it. I love it. I very much agree with what you say. Um, but sometimes it's really hard to know when you've been lost in this regulation what your true values are. Because some of them you think, okay, yeah, I got my values, but some of them can be like society's values or your family's values, and you are not expressing at a core level from your, you know, actual blueprint in your actual DNA, so to speak. How can someone, get in touch with their values? What's the advice?
How can somebody get in touch with their values? There may be a simple answer for this that I'm not thinking of right now, but I guess simplest way I can put it is if you had only enough left in you to choose one thing, like
Mm,
and everything else is burned to the ground and you have nothing left, what would you use your last breath for? What would you use your last day for? If you could only focus on one thing, what would it be? And so like, some people will say, well, my highest value is truth. But then if you got into a situation where you had to choose between the truth and your family's safety, what would you do then? If you had to choose between your health and your ability to follow your dreams, what would you choose then? These
mm-hmm.
are not, these don't have easy answers,
No.
but when it comes down to it, that's what determines your highest values. For example, for me, um, if I had to choose between financial stability and, you know, my purpose, I'd just be living in my car. Okay, not a hard thing for me, even though it is some of the circumstances would be hard with that, but the choice is not hard.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
if it was between living my authentic life and my purpose or financial stability, because to me, if you don't have your purpose, you don't have a life at all anyway. But those are my values. Somebody else might say, no, my financial stability and my family are my highest priorities. And you know what? My family's so important to me that any other purpose just isn't as important. And that's okay too. Just
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to, yeah, to get to know your values more. That's an amazing approach. I like it. I like it. Yeah, sometimes we have to think in somewhat in a kind of extreme way to reduce all the background noise, okay, when we have all of these doubts. I was thinking about what you said and I thought I would travel. That's what I like doing. That's one of my values, and movement and adventure. And when I feel that I don't have that, I have a tendency to get more limbic. It's true.
That's my version of that is music. If I don't have music in my life, and I'm not talking about listening to music,
Hmm, hmm.
believe it or not, I don't listen to lots of music because I feel like it clouds my channel for creating. But
Yeah.
creating music, being having my hands in some music, if I don't
Yeah.
have that, I will get just more misaligned. And my girlfriend even tells me like when I'm doing music, my face looks different. And when
Uh-huh.
I'm not doing it, it's like I'm just not as here. I look more stressed or just more tired or just
Hmm.
because that vital glow is not there without my deepest passion. And I love to coach people, of course, too, but they're different things and one can't replace the other for me.
Yeah. 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 Same here. Same here. When I'm not doing stuff that, are aligned with my values, I have a tendency to get into a shutdown response and to see everything very gray. But the moment I water back the plant, boom, my vital force gets stronger every single time. It's really interesting. I think that we were born with some gifts, some it's a blueprint, right? And we get sick because we are not expressing that blueprint unapologetically, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that part of healing is coming back to that blueprint and embracing the fear that we all, feel of being ourselves, right? That's really hard sometimes.
Being unapologetically yourself, unless you're a sociopath or just truly a very special person, you're going to have some fear at some point, at least in the period where you're getting used to being yourself when you haven't been. There's probably going to be some fear, and that's normal. That's okay.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah.
completely. Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I don't know what else to ask you about, but I think that this was really great. I really enjoyed this conversation. Um, where people can, where can people find you if they want to work with you one on one?
Well, I'm on YouTube and Instagram and all that jazz. Um, Forging Your Legend, but my website is forgingyourlegend.com. Um, and I've got a lot of stuff on there. Um, Compared to a lot of websites, I've just noticed I have a lot of pictures, a lot of words, a lot of offerings. So check that out. And Yeah, I chose Forging Your Legend as a name, by the way, because of the role that I see purpose having. And I
Mm.
about this whole journey, this whole thing that we're doing um, in remaking ourselves out of chronic illness into something we're born to be. And then now we're both at the stage of helping other people do that.
Right.
That's all about forging your legendary self. It's about forging this terrible thing that's happened into this golden weapon of truth and light. And I'm going to be honest, I get really, really tired of coaching very quickly when it's all about the mechanics of just getting through the day and surviving.
Mm-hmm, me
What
too.
sets me up is talking about it's not about the depth of the challenge. I've worked with some people who have crazy challenges, but it's how to take that challenge and turn it into what you're here for, even if that takes 5, 10 years. Like there's stuff that even after I was done retraining, even after I was done with that healing journey, I still had to wait to do stuff that took 20 years to get to do. And that doesn't take away from it at all. But it that's the part that excites me, helping people go from the farthest possible corner of hell, so far from their purpose they can't even imagine it, to finding, what do I want to get to? What do I want to do? What do I want to be? And finding, just even if it's that tiny speck of light that they're going to have to nurture over years, but eventually find their way back to shining their light. That's what gets me excited. So,
Yeah, sounds really epic. I love it. I love that passion that you're projecting. Sounds really good. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing to be able to help other people to get out of this darkness. And yeah, we have to keep spreading the message of hope and light, not from a Disney New Age standpoint, right? But from a grounded standpoint. And yeah, it's been a complete pleasure to have this conversation with you. And yeah, thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
appreciate you as well. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and thanks for having me. Let's do this again when it feels right.
Yep. Take care.
Take care.
Bye bye.